First night after the bandages came off, Clara pressed her palms against her eyes. No light leaked through. The doctors called it total retinal detachment. She called it a wall of black velvet that never lifted. She sat on the edge of her hospital bed, fingers tracing the unfamiliar texture of her own eyelids. The room smelled of antiseptic and stale coffee. Somewhere down the hall, a machine beeped in a slow, steady rhythm. She had expected silence. Instead, the world had become louder than she remembered. The squeak of a nurse's shoes on linoleum, the rustle of a curtain being drawn, the way her own breath sounded different when it hit the inside of her cupped hands. She lowered her hands and listened. The darkness wasn't empty. It was full of things she had never noticed before. 3 days later, Clara stood in her kitchen, trying to pour coffee without seeing the mug. The liquid hit the counter with a sharp hiss. She froze. The sound wasn't just louder, it was different. Higher pitched, almost musical. She tilted the pot again, slower this time. The stream of coffee made a soft, rhythmic patter against the ceramic. She could hear the exact moment the mug filled, the pitch rising like a violin note. Her hands trembled. She had poured coffee 1,000 times, but she had never heard it like this. That's when she noticed the hum, a low, constant vibration in the walls, the refrigerator, the clock on the stove. Even the air itself seemed to thrum with energy. She reached out and touched the counter. The granite was cool, smooth, but beneath her fingertips, she felt something else, a faint pulse, like the distant beat of a drum. She had lived in this apartment for 5 years. How had she never noticed this before? The answer came to her in the middle of the night. She was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling she couldn't see. The darkness wasn't just making her hear better, it was making her listen. For the first time in her life, her brain wasn't drowning in visual noise. No flickering screens, no flashing ads, no faces to read, no colors to process, just sound and touch, and the quiet, insistent presence of the world around her. She rolled onto her side and pressed her ear against the pillow. The fabric muffled everything but the sound of her own heartbeat. Slow, steady, like a metronome. Then she heard it, the faintest whisper of air moving through the vent. A sound so subtle she would have missed it before. But now it was a river, a current, a living thing. She sat up. The room was still dark, but it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt alive. The next morning, Clara called her sister. "I think I can hear the wind," she said. "Not just feel it, hear it." Her sister laughed. "That's impossible. Wind doesn't make sound." Clara didn't argue. She knew what she heard. She went outside and stood on the sidewalk. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of wet pavement and distant rain. She closed her eyes, though it made no difference, and listened. The wind wasn't just moving through the trees. It was singing, a high, thin note in the branches, a deeper rumble in the power lines. A whisper against her skin. She reached out and touched the bark of a nearby tree, rough, grooved, alive. She had touched trees before, but never like this, never with her full attention. Never with her brain rewired to notice every ridge, every crack, every shift in texture. That's when she realized the truth. Her blindness hadn't taken her sight. It had given her something else. Something she had never known she was missing. A week later, Clara sat in a neuroscientist's office. Dr. Ellis leaned forward, his voice careful. "We've seen this before. The brain's visual cortex doesn't just shut down when it stops receiving input. It repurposes itself. It starts processing other senses." Clara nodded. She didn't need an explanation. She was living it. But Dr. Ellis wasn't finished. "What you're experiencing isn't just heightened awareness. It's neural plasticity. Your brain is rewiring itself in real time." She thought of the coffee pouring, the wind singing, the way her fingertips could now read the grain of wood like braille. "That's why it matters," she said. "Because it's not just about hearing better. It's about understanding better. The world doesn't change." We doctor smiled. "Exactly. Darkness doesn't just take, it gives, but only if you let it. Clara left the office that day with a new mission. She started paying attention, not just to sound, but to everything. The way a door handle felt different when it was cold. The way her footsteps echoed differently on tile versus carpet. The way her own voice sounded when she spoke to herself in an empty room. She began to notice patterns. The way her neighbor's dog barked 3 times before the mailman arrived. The way the elevator in her building made a distinct clunk on the 3rd floor. The way her favorite mug had a tiny chip on the rim that she could feel with her thumb. These weren't just details. They were a language. A way of understanding the world that she had never bothered to learn before. One evening, Clara sat on her balcony, listening to the city. Cars honking, sirens wailing. Music drifting from an open window. Before, it had all been noise. A wall of sound. Now, it was a symphony. She could pick out individual instruments. The bass line of a song. The rhythm of footsteps on the sidewalk below. The way a baby's cry rose and fell in waves. She closed her eyes and let it wash over her. The darkness wasn't a void. It was a canvas. And her brain was painting it with sound, touch, scent, every sense she had. She thought about all the years she had spent with her eyes open, but never truly seeing, never truly listening, never truly feeling. The world had been there all along. She just hadn't known how to pay attention. That's when she made a decision. She wasn't going to wait for her brain to adapt. She was going to help it. She started small, sitting in the dark for 10 minutes a day, just listening, touching different textures, sandpaper, silk, the rough bark of a tree, smelling spices, flowers, the pages of old books. She wanted to wake up every sense she had, to see what her brain could do when it wasn't distracted by light. A month later, Clara stood in a park, her fingers tracing the veins of a leaf. She could feel the tiny ridges, the way the edges curled slightly. She brought it to her nose and inhaled. Green, earthy, alive. She had smelled leaves before, but never like this. Never with this depth, this clarity. She dropped the leaf and reached for her phone. She dialed her sister. "You were wrong," she said. "Wind does make sound, and so does everything else." Her sister was silent for a moment. Then, softly, "What else can you hear?" Clara smiled. "Everything. I can hear everything." That's when she realized the most surprising thing of all. Her blindness hadn't just changed how she experienced the world. It had changed how she experienced herself. She wasn't just hearing better. She was thinking better, remembering better, feeling better. The darkness hadn't taken her sight. It had given her a new way to see. And now she wanted to share it. She started a blog. Wrote about the sounds of rain on different surfaces. The way a crowded room felt different from an empty one. The hidden textures of everyday objects. People started reading. Then they started trying it themselves, closing their eyes in the shower, sitting in the dark and listening, touching things they had never bothered to notice before. Clara's inbox filled with messages. "I heard my cat purr for the first time. I noticed the way my husband's voice changes when he's tired. I realized I've been missing half the world." She read each one, her heart swelling. She wasn't alone. The world was full of people who had forgotten how to pay attention, who had let their brains get lazy, drowning in visual noise. But it wasn't too late. The brain could change. It could adapt. It could see in ways no one expected. All it took was a little darkness and a willingness to listen. So here's the question. What are you missing right now? What sounds, textures, scents are slipping past you because your brain is too busy processing light? Next time you're in the dark, don't reach for your phone. Don't turn on the light. Just listen, touch, breathe. Your brain is waiting, and it has something to show you.